There was something breathing behind the wall. I'm not speaking in metaphors. It started on a Thursday. I heard it late at night, 3, maybe 4 a.m. A long, drawn inhale, wet, deliberate. It came from the dry wall behind our bed, just once. Then silence. I lay still, clutching the blanket like it was a shield. I didn't wake her. The next night, I heard it again. But this time, I wasn't alone. She heard it too. She sat straight up, pale as paper, and whispered, "Don't worry, it's just the plumbing. Except, we don't have any pipes on that wall. Except we both knew it didn't sound like pipes. Except, she didn't seem scared, just annoyed. And that scared me more than anything. The next morning, she acted like it never happened. Made eggs, kissed my cheek, hummed to herself, wore a red sweater I hadn't seen since 2019. When I asked her about the breathing, she tilted her head and smiled too wide. "Lowell," she said, "you've been dreaming again." Except I hadn't. I started noticing other things. The basement door unlocked when I was sure I'd latched it. The neighbor's dog refused to step onto our lawn, and every morning for 5 days straight, I found a faint trail of dirt leading from the guest bedroom to her side of the bed. That room hadn't been used in months. But the thing that broke me? On the 6th night, I was up late scrolling old emails when I heard her laugh from downstairs. She was asleep beside me. Number not asleep. Something was breathing again, louder now, hungrier. That's when I decided to leave. I packed in silence. No note, no confrontation. I didn't want the truth anymore. I just wanted out. I made it as far as the front porch when my phone rang. No caller ID. I answered anyway. And her voice, came through the speaker. But she was crying and whispering, "Lowell, if you're hearing this, I'm not in the house. That thing, it's not me." And then the call dropped. I stood there on the porch, phone still in my hand, staring at the screen like it might light up again and fix everything. But it didn't. No new call, no message, just the echo of her words in my skull. "That thing, it's not me." I turned around slowly, half expecting the door behind me to creak open on its own. It didn't. But I swear I heard footsteps upstairs, moving slow, deliberate, and barefoot. I knew the sound. Jessa always walked like she was sneaking through her own life. Only, she was supposed to be asleep, or gone, or, God, I didn't know anymore. I don't remember unlocking the door, but suddenly I was back inside. I needed proof, sanity, something. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. I didn't turn the lights on. I wanted to hear it before it saw me. The house was silent, completely still. No breathing, no movement. The stairs creaked under my weight, like they were warning the house I was coming. Every door upstairs was closed except ours. When I reached the bedroom, it was empty. The bed was made, her pillow fluffed, my side untouched, as if no one had ever slept there at all. That's when I noticed something else. The window? It was wide open. Mind you, this is Vermont in early April. It was 34 degrees out. There's no world where Jessa would sleep with the window open. She wore thermal socks in July, but the curtain was fluttering in the cold wind, and there were wet footprints leading across the hardwood. Not muddy, just wet, barefoot, like someone had climbed in from the roof. I followed them. They led to the closet. I don't know why I opened it. I don't know what I expected, but I sure as hell didn't expect to find my own jacket hanging inside, soaked through with a small handprint on the sleeve, a handprint I didn't recognize. It was wrong, too small, too long. The proportions weren't human. It was like a child's hand, stretched. And in the pocket of the jacket was a folded piece of newspaper, dated 6 days in the future, with a headline that read, "Local man found dead in bedroom closet. Wife missing." That's when I heard the creak behind me. I turned, and she was there. Jessa, standing in the hallway, smiling, but not blinking. And for some reason, the thing that terrified me most, she was wearing my watch, the one I had packed in my duffel bag an hour earlier. She didn't move. Just stood there in the hallway, barefoot and still, like a figure in an oil painting that shouldn't exist anymore. Her eyes were glassy, vacant, but that smile never faltered. It wasn't relief, it wasn't joy. It was rehearsed, mechanical, like someone had taught her how to smile without ever explaining why. I opened my mouth to speak, but I didn't even know what I meant to say. Ask her what? Where have you been? Why are you wearing my watch? Why do you look like you haven't blinked since last Thursday? The questions were piling up inside me, but none of them made it past my lips. My throat was locked. "I didn't think you'd come back inside," she finally said, voice flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a script. "But I'm glad you did, I really am." I nodded slowly, taking one step back toward the stairs. Just one. Just enough to make space between us. She didn't react. That was somehow worse. "I got a call," I said quietly. "From you. You said—" She cut me off. "That wasn't me." I froze. She didn't blink. "I mean, it was me, but it wasn't this me." She tilted her head slightly like she was admiring me, or maybe measuring. "You took the wrong version of me, Lowell. That's always been your problem." "I don't understand," I said, my voice cracked. "Jessa, what the hell is happening to you?" Her smile widened, but her eyes stayed lifeless. "You'll see soon, but for now, you should go back outside, before it realizes you're still here." "What?" I whispered. That's when I heard the whisper from the closet behind me. Only it wasn't one voice. It was two. One low and gravelly, the other high and breathless. Both speaking at once, not to me, but through me. As if the air itself was being used to translate a language my body was never meant to hear. My knees nearly gave out. "I tried to keep it out," she said softly now. "I told you to leave. You almost made it. But you opened the door again. You let it know." I turned back toward the closet, and it was open. But the jacket was gone. The newspaper, gone. Instead, something else had been left in its place. My wedding ring, which was impossible, because I was still wearing mine. I looked down at my hand, and it was bare. I didn't feel it come off. I didn't take it off. And now it was sitting there in the closet, resting gently in a shallow puddle of water, like it had been offered up by something that had hands but no skin. "I need you to leave," she said suddenly, louder, firmer. Her voice cracked. For the first time in days, or maybe weeks, she sounded like her. Like the real Jessa. "Lowell, if you trust me at all, walk out now and don't look back. Please." I hesitated. I didn't move. Behind her, at the end of the hallway, another shape stepped into view. And it looked just like me, except it was smiling. At first I thought it was a mirror trick, some strange reflection from the dark hallway behind her. The kind you catch in a dream and forget as soon as you wake up. But then it moved, not like a person, not like a reflection. It moved like something pretending to be human. Like it had watched me long enough to learn the motions, but still hadn't figured out how to be subtle. It stepped forward, tilting its head at a fraction too sharp an angle, its limbs just slightly too long, like the proportions had been copied from memory and not blueprints. It was wearing my favorite flannel, the green one with the torn cuff. I hadn't worn that shirt in weeks, but the worst part wasn't its posture. It wasn't even the dead, stretching smile across its face. It was the eyes, because they weren't mine. They were Jessa's. Deep brown, glassy, hollow, and locked straight onto me, watching, waiting. I stumbled backward and nearly fell down the stairs. Jessa, the one in front of me, didn't react. Or maybe she couldn't. She looked frozen. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Her arms were stiff at her sides, like she was bracing herself for a crash that hadn't happened yet. "Lowell," she whispered finally as I reached the landing. "If it touches you, it keeps you. Please, don't let it touch you." I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted for the door and threw it open, expecting the cold night air to slap me back into something resembling sanity. But the outside wasn't how I left it. The stars were gone. No clouds, just nothing. Like the sky had been erased. The neighborhood was too still, too perfect. No wind, no distant traffic. No porch lights, even though I knew the Thompsons next door always left theirs on. And the worst part? My car was gone. Completely gone. Not stolen, just missing. Like it had never existed. I turned to run back in, somehow thinking Jessa could explain this, or that we could hide. But the house was no longer behind me. It was a tree, a single gnarled oak leaning slightly to the right. I blinked and turned again. Another tree. Another. The house wasn't just gone. It had never been here. Panic bloomed in my chest, thick and electric. My breath came out in short gasps. I clutched the phone in my pocket, but there was no service. No signal. The screen flickered once, then went black, even though I'd charged it an hour ago. And then I heard my own voice behind me. "Lowell," it said, calm, steady, almost amused. "You brought this on yourself." I turned. It was the thing with my face, closer now, closer than it had ever been. But its mouth wasn't moving. The voice had come from inside my head. It raised its hand slowly, deliberately, and in its palm was the pink umbrella, the one from the chimney. And dangling from the broken handle, tied with a strand of red hair, was my wedding ring. The one still missing from my hand. I looked down at my finger. It was bleeding. The ring hadn't been removed. It had been taken. There's something the mind does when it's confronted with a truth too large to hold. It folds, refuses to download the terror, like a computer skipping a corrupt file. That's what my brain did when I saw the bleeding finger. It didn't process pain. It didn't scream or panic. It just stuttered. Like I had ceased to exist for a second, and when I rebooted, I wasn't entirely sure I'd come back the same. The thing that looked like me was still standing there, motionless, holding out the pink umbrella like it was some sort of offering. Its eyes, her eyes, never blinked, and I realized with a slow, crawling horror that it hadn't breathed once since I first saw it. The woods around us weren't woods anymore. They'd shifted again. The trees were too symmetrical, perfectly spaced like they had been rendered in a dream. No leaves, no wind. And the ground? It felt soft but hollow, like I was walking on skin stretched over bone. I started walking. Anywhere. I didn't look back. I didn't speak. I just moved. That's all you can do when your world has lost all its walls. You pick a direction and pray it doesn't loop. I must have walked for an hour before I saw the house again. But it wasn't my house. It looked like it. Same structure, same porch, even the dented mailbox I swore I'd fix 100 times. But the windows were wrong. Too many. And they were all lit, even though I hadn't turned on a single lamp when I left. Something about the glow from inside felt artificial, like the warmth of a movie set, manufactured to trick you into stepping inside. I knew I shouldn't go in, so of course I did. Inside, the air was warm, humid, like breath trapped in a plastic bag. The smell hit me first, something metallic and sweet, like overripe fruit and rusted coins. I stepped cautiously into the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. Photos. Hundreds of them, covering the walls, all of me, sleeping, brushing my teeth, staring at my phone. Some were taken from angles that should have been impossible, inside my closet, under the bed, behind mirrors. And worse, in several of them. I wasn't alone. Jessa was there, but not Jessa. Not the one I remembered. In the photos, she was twisted, blurred at the edges, like someone had dragged a wet brush over her image. She looked bigger somehow, taller. Her limbs didn't bend the right way. In one photo, she was directly behind me, grinning, while I sat at my desk, completely unaware. That photo was dated 2 days ago. I stumbled back, knocking over a stack of empty frames. The crash didn't echo. It just stopped, like sound didn't work right in this version of the house. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it again. Breathing. Not behind a wall this time. Not from the ceiling, but right in front of me, coming from the photo on the fridge. I stepped closer. It was a Polaroid of our wedding day, or it was trying to be. I recognized the suit, the veil, the old church, but our faces were missing, scratched out, not blacked or blurred, peeled away, like the photo itself had been gouged with fingernails. Then the Polaroid moved, the paper flexed, as if exhaling. I backed away, trembling, and from the living room came the sound of piano keys, slow, familiar. It was Jessa's old melody, the one she used to play on bad days when she didn't want to talk. She hadn't touched the piano in over a year. I followed the sound. There was no piano, just her, sitting on the couch, hands on her lap, eyes closed, swaying ever so gently. The music was still playing, but not from her fingers, from somewhere else, somewhere beneath the floorboards. "Lowell," she said softly, her voice clear and unbroken. "If you stay here, you'll forget you ever left." She opened her eyes. They were mine. I didn't respond at first. I couldn't. My legs had started to shake. It wasn't fear, not exactly, not in the way you feel when someone jumps out at you or you hear a creak in the attic. No, this was worse. This was fear's older sibling, recognition. The feeling that something horrifying had always been there, watching, waiting, and you were only now catching up to the truth it already knew. She still sat on the couch, calm, composed, eyes locked onto mine. But they weren't Jess's anymore. They had my shape, my crow's feet, the uneven freckle below the left eyelid. It was like looking into a mirror that didn't reflect what was real, but what was stolen. "I asked you not to come back," she said gently, as if scolding a child. "You crossed over when you stepped through the porch, and now it knows you're still in play." I tried to ask who "it" was, but the words fumbled in my throat. My mouth moved, but sound refused to form. I was losing grip. The air in this house, or whatever simulation of a house this was, felt thick with memory, like breathing through layers of my own past. Every photo, every sound, every object seemed designed not just to trap me physically, but to replicate my understanding of the world. "What is this place?" I finally managed to whisper. She tilted her head, sympathetic in that terrible, quiet way that made me feel like a guest in my own story. "A nesting box," she said. "Each time we make a choice, a version of us breaks off. Most fade, some survive, and some—" She trailed off. "Some start to wander." She stood now, her movement stiff but elegant, as though every gesture was pre-recorded. She walked toward the fireplace and ran her fingers along the mantel, eyes tracing invisible lines in the wood. "You never wondered where dreams go when we forget them?" she asked. "They don't disappear, Lowell. They wait. And sometimes they build." I didn't understand most of what she was saying, but deep inside me, a part I didn't know existed did. That part was already screaming to get out. That part had seen something it couldn't unsee. Then she said something that cracked the shell of my confusion. "It's not the first time you've tried to leave." I stared at her. She smiled again, but it wasn't cruel. It was tired. "You've walked out 100 times. Different shoes, different jackets. One time you tried through the basement. Another time you climbed out the attic window. But you always end up back here. And each time, you remember a little less. Except this time." My knees gave out. I fell to the floor, not from pain, but from the sheer weight of it. The gravity of what she said pushed every breath out of my lungs. I tried to remember something, anything from the last week or month. Where I'd been, what I'd done. The last meal I ate, the last time I laughed. Nothing came, just fog, impressions, a red umbrella, a jacket in a closet that didn't belong to me, a phone call from a voice that might have been Jessa's, but was already fading from memory like steam on glass. "Why me?" I asked finally, the words hoarse and broken. "Why do I keep coming back?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the fireplace, into the embers, and pulled out something wrapped in velvet. She held it out to me with both hands. I hesitated, then took it. My fingers shook as I peeled back the fabric. Inside was a tape recorder. Old, dusty, labeled in red marker, Jessa_4.7, and under that, a second label, "Do not play while he's near." I looked up at her, confused, but she was gone. Not walked away, gone, vanished like a skipped frame in a corrupted file. The couch was empty, the fireplace cold. The photos on the wall had all gone blank, and behind me, in the silence, came the unmistakable sound of a key turning in the front door. The key turned once, then again. Slow, deliberate rotations like someone trying to be heard. I stayed frozen, crouched low beside the fireplace, the tape recorder clutched in both hands. My brain was screaming at me to run, to hide, to throw the thing across the room and find a way out. But I didn't move. Some part of me, that same buried part that seemed to already know all of this, told me that whatever was coming through the door wasn't coming to kill me. It was coming to remind me. The door creaked open. I expected footsteps, breathing, some kind of presence, but nothing came in. Just silence, thick and waiting. I crawled forward, heart thundering in my chest, and peered around the corner. The front door was wide open, and beyond it, there was no outside, just a blank gray corridor, concrete walls, low flickering lights, endless in both directions, like a hospital basement that had forgotten it was part of a building. And standing in the doorway was me. Not a creature in my shape, not something faking it, me. Same eyes, same scar on my eyebrow from that bike accident in 8th grade. But his skin looked gray, dry, like paper that had been soaked and left to rot. His expression was hollow, defeated. Not angry, not violent, just finished. He didn't speak. He raised one hand slowly and pointed at the recorder in my grip. Then he stepped back into the hallway and vanished into the fog. I didn't follow. I closed the door, and then I pressed play. The tape whirred for a few seconds before anything came through. Then I heard it. Jessa's voice, low, cracked, whispering. If you're hearing this, it means you're still stuck in 4.7. God, Lowell, I hope this version of you listens. There was a pause, like she was trying to steady herself. You don't remember me, not properly. That's part of it. That's what the house does. It feeds off forgetfulness. It loops you. Each version of you that walks back inside leaves something behind, a memory, a word, a face. That's why they all look like you. It's not just haunting you, Lowell, it's becoming you. I felt sick. My mouth went dry. I tried to help you in the others. I really did. I played the melody. I left the umbrella. I even called from outside the system. That call, it cost me more than you'll ever know. But this is the last time. I can't come back again. I'm out of sync. I don't belong to any one version anymore. I'm bleeding between cracks. The tape hissed. She returned, voice fainter now. There's a door in the basement. It only opens when you remember how we met. The real way. Not the story you've told yourself. Not the safe version. It has to be the truth. Speak it out loud, then run. And for the love of everything, don't look at your reflection when the door opens. It isn't you! Static surged through the speaker, sharp and sudden, making me drop the recorder. As it hit the ground, the tape popped free and skittered under the couch. I didn't go after it. Instead, I stood slowly and turned toward the hallway, toward the basement door. It was already open, and down below, far beneath the floorboards, I could hear it. The piano, playing itself, but not the melody Jessa used to play. This was different, lower, reversed, like a song being unremembered. And layered beneath it, almost hidden in the noise, came a voice I hadn't heard in years. My voice, screaming. I stood at the top of the basement stairs, staring into the dark. My body wanted to move, to run, to close the door, and pretend none of this ever happened. But something deep inside me, the part that had somehow survived dozens of loops and fractured timelines, was done hiding. I didn't want another version of myself dragging through this place. I wanted it to end. I wanted her to end it with me. I stepped down slowly. Each stair groaned underfoot like it was remembering my weight. The darkness below wasn't just absence of light. It felt like absence of permission, like I wasn't supposed to be here. But I kept going. Halfway down, I realized I was crying. Not from fear, but from something else. A feeling I couldn't name. Grief, maybe. Grief for all the versions of me that had tried and failed. For the version of Jessa who had broken herself trying to leave a message across time. At the bottom of the stairs, I found the door. Rusty, wooden, smaller than I expected. It was pulsing faintly, like it was alive. And somehow, I knew. This was it. It would either set me free or erase me completely. But before it would open, I had to do one thing, tell the truth. So, I said it aloud for the first time in years. We met at my mother's funeral. You offered me gum. The moment the words left my mouth, the door breathed. That's the only way I can describe it. Like it had been holding its lungs still for years and had finally been allowed to exhale. And then it creaked open. Inside was a single room, empty, except for her. Jessa, the real one. She looked older, exhausted, but whole. Real. Her eyes were her own. She smiled. Not the rehearsed smile, not the dream smile, but her smile. The one that crinkled at the edges and made you feel like maybe the world wasn't so sharp. I was afraid it wouldn't be you, she said softly. I stepped into the room. My legs were trembling. I think I've been walking in circles for years, I said. She nodded. Most of you have, but this time you remembered. What happens now? She reached for my hand. We leave. But how? She pointed to a blank wall behind me. I turned, and suddenly, it wasn't blank. It was a window. On the other side, I saw sunlight. A lake. Our car parked on gravel. Birds. Wind. Reality. The version where we lived, where we got better. Where we didn't dissolve into broken timelines and haunted photographs. And as we stepped through, together, the house behind us folded in on itself like a paper crane sinking into water. I don't remember how we got home, but I remember the sound of real birds. I remember Jess's hand never letting go of mine, and I remember waking up the next morning in a world that didn't rearrange itself when I blinked. The ring was back on my finger. The piano was silent. The closet was empty. The umbrella was gone, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be, alive, awake, and finally free.